Hello and welcome. I'm Karen Garvey. I'm so glad that you're joining me tonight. I want to talk about relationships. There are a lot of topics that I could discuss at any given time, but the most pressing topic I see among my clients right now is about having more harmonious relationships. Also to allow them to see if there's something that we could be doing to improve the relationships that we want, to attract in relationships that are more suitable for what it is that we're looking for in the moment. But the idea is that fundamentally, I'm letting things build here, fundamentally, no matter what it is we're looking to achieve, we're not doing it alone. We're doing it with people. We're doing it with perhaps someone that we're romantically connected to. Work-wise, we have coworkers and bosses and associates. We have so many people that are connected to our journeys, siblings and children and parents. And if you are in a position where your relationships are not harmonious, they're not mutually beneficial, then so many of the things that you're turning your attention to can fall apart. They can leave you feeling depleted. They can leave you feeling empty or inadequate. So I did bring with me a lot of questions that people have been sending in to me all week, but I'll also be taking questions live tonight. The first thing that I want to talk about is just the nature of our relationships. There's a fundamental truth that binds all of us. And if you begin by understanding this truth for yourself and for others, that alone, that truth, that acceptance can help you to have better relationships. And think about this for a minute. What it is that everyone on this planet wants to be valued. Everybody wants to be appreciated. You know, you can think about it as everybody wants to be loved, but it's easier to say it's in terms of everyone wants to be respected. We all want to be liked. That's what it comes down to. And as we're moving through life, if you keep that one thought in your mind, it helps you to bring forth the part of you that's going to be more respectful and maybe more kind, but at least more understanding of all of the people that you're coming into contact with. Remember that. No matter how much somebody says, I don't need people, or I don't care what other people think, or give me your criticism, give me your honest feedback. The truth is, everybody wants to feel as though you value them, that you think that they're good, that you think that they're worthy. And we come to each interaction with the idea that people are going to understand what it is that we're wanting to gain from each interaction. But that's not how it works. We each have an agenda. I don't care if you're at the local 7-Eleven and you're buying a pack of gum, or if you're walking into your boss's office to have a serious conversation about your profession, your development, and your future. But you have an agenda in each case, and so does the other person. You don't necessarily know what that other person's agenda is. The only thing you're really conscious of is your agenda. But if you enter into that interaction recognizing that the other person wants to be valued, it helps you be mindful of how your agenda is affecting them. And it's kind of interesting. We would think that everybody would come to every interaction where they want it to be harmonious and we want to have a positive and good result. But we're coming to every interaction with a whole history of what we've experienced before. So unknowingly, we could actually be kind of eliciting some kind of behavior or trait in another person that echoes what we're accustomed to. So for example, if I really felt unworthy at work and I was intimidated by my boss, you might suppose I'd walk into an office to have a conversation about my career, and I'd want to have this person understand me and cooperate and build me up and say, these are all the great and wonderful things that you've done, and here's how I see you. But if I have a history that people have not appreciated me, I've been criticized my whole life, I've been put down, if that's my history, I might unconsciously come into that conversation expecting that that person is not going to value me. I might go in there and say, listen, here's what I've done and I want to raise, but I might actually think if I say anything, if I say too much, I might wind up getting fired. They might say, oh, you did a really crummy job on the Murphy proposal. So if I'm expecting to be put down, if I'm expecting to be disappointed, then I'm not necessarily entering into that interaction expecting or bringing about a positive result. And the reason it's important to think about this is because you're not always going to know how someone else is going to react to you. The only thing you have any control over whatsoever is how you interact with other people. That's your only method of control. So you want to be clear that your agenda is to communicate whatever it is you want. I'm buying this pack of gum, I'm giving you money, you're going to be professional and kind to me, preferably, but I'm going to get my correct change, I'm going to get my gum, and I'm going to leave happy, and the interaction is complete. If that person that I'm interacting with is grumpy, unkind, disrespectful, I can still bring to the table that I want you to feel good about yourself, and I could maybe think of a way to brighten that person's day. Maybe I can make an assumption that something happened with the customer right before me. Maybe I can assume that there's something even about the way that I look that doesn't make them feel comfortable or welcome. I don't have to know what the other person is experiencing. My role is my participation. And that's very fundamental to all successful relationships and all successful interactions. The one thing that we want to think about even beyond that is even before you begin to talk to somebody, to co-create with somebody, to love somebody, to date somebody, to get involved in a project with someone, the best gift that you can give to yourself before that begins is to learn how to like yourself more. And that's the truth in anything. Because what I have discovered is that the number one requirement for a mutually beneficial relationship of any sort with your children, with your coworkers, your boss, your neighbor, anyone, is mutual respect. And it's going to be impossible for you to come to the table in that relationship if you're not loving yourself, being able to have the balance of someone appreciating you and respecting you the way that you would like to be appreciated and respected. Growing self-love means that you become more confident, and confidence is attractive. It makes a person feel more comfortable being around you. It doesn't come easy necessarily to grow your self-love. It's a process. You can't watch this for an hour and then say, that's it, I'm done, I feel good, I'm pumped up, I can do anything. But you can be mindful of peeling away the masks and layers that have separated you from your belief in your own worth. And, you know, thinking about childhood, thinking about were you buoyed, were you complimented, were you appreciated, were you criticized, neglected, or abused? If you think in terms of what you experienced in the beginning of your life, you have a fundamental understanding of areas in which you might not be whole in your ability to love yourself. And those are the areas that you want to focus on. Why do I feel insecure about this? Why do I maybe feel inadequate here? And when you are able to begin to really identify the cause and the effect, you begin to rebuild your ability to see yourself for who you are, simply by understanding that the way that other people treated you or the way that other people tagged you, if it wasn't respectful, if it wasn't understanding the magnificence of you, then there was something false in that equation. I can't go into the entire building of self-love tonight. You're welcome to read one of my books, which is called Begin Here. It basically is a book that I say, no matter how much you love yourself when you begin reading the book, you're going to love yourself more by the time you've completed it. And since self-love is the foundation for all harmony, not only in relationships, but all harmony in your life, then that's a good place to start. Begin here. So let's turn our attention to something that's more relationship oriented, making the assumption that loving yourself is something that you understand is significant enough that you will concentrate your effort and put your energy and your time and your focus into it, parallel to understanding the nature of your relationships. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to have and develop and attract those relationships in that you want. But I do want to spend most of the time here tonight answering questions, because I recognize that the way people come together in a group, those who are here, we help each other and benefit each other just by being in the same situation at the same time. So if I'm answering a question for one person, I will be answering a question for many people at the same time. And as I said, I have a good growing stack here, and I can see more questions coming up as we speak. So far we've talked about the value of self-love. We've talked about mutual respect being the most fundamental element in a mutual relationship, a mutually beneficial relationship. Let's talk about some relationships more specifically. For example, one of the ongoing challenges I help clients manage is that there can be a time within their romantic relationship, no matter if they're dating or they're married or they're committed or even if it's new. And they go through an evaluation period where some things are feeling kind of abrasive, and they're not fundamentally sure, am I with the person that's right for me? And it's an aching feeling to not know that, and it feels like there's such urgency in making the decision about whether or not this person is right for me, or should I exit from the relationship and move on, giving myself time to build a different kind of relationship if that is what I like. And you know, what I remind people is that no two people are alike. And in the sphere of our lives, and it is a sphere, there are so many different people and experiences that make up the composite of what it is that we're doing on a regular basis. And your romantic relationship, no matter how big of a part that is to you as far as your overall happiness and fulfillment, it still is just one component of the sphere of your whole being. It's not everything, but it is something, and it's significant. So one of the first things to do when you're curious about the nature of your relationship with the person that you're with is to think in terms of, how much of this sphere is this person filling with me, for me? Does it feel like they're taking a hole out and leaving me with this big void? Is my romantic relationship significant enough to me to make me feel as though it takes up half of the sphere? Or do I see it as one complex aspect that, in conjunction with my friends and family and other areas of my life, make up the whole? So you for yourself have to make a decision about how significant that relationship or any romantic relationship is in the scheme of your whole life. That's an important thing to think about. And when you're thinking in terms of that and the other loving relationships or relationships that you're interacting with on a regular basis, you have to also remember that not one person can fulfill every area of your life. It's impossible. And along those lines, you can't fill every area of someone's life. You shouldn't be expected to. And if you are trying to drive yourself into being the be-all, end-all for someone, that might mean that you are compromising your own self-identification to try to mirror what you believe that they want. But truly, we're all original. We have idiosyncrasies, we have history, we have baggage, we have likes, we have dislikes, we have personalities, we have moods, we have all of these things. So if each person is so individual and so ever changing and so evolving, how can any one person be the be all end all and complete another? It's simply not possible. And even more so if you recognize that self-love is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. So no one can complete you, especially if you're not loving yourself. They can't fill that hole, they can't fill that void. Now, does that mean that a relationship shouldn't be satisfying, shouldn't be fun, shouldn't be something that you enjoy processing and growing and expanding within? That the bulk of the time that you're spending with each other, you're enjoying each other's company? You should. You should enjoy the other person for the bulk of the time. Not necessarily all of the time, not necessarily this massive 90% plus majority of the time. Just as the other person may have certain likes and dislikes that are not in alignment with yours, you might have likes and dislikes that are not in alignment with theirs. And we all have different parts of life. Things are going really great here, things are going good there, but then all of a sudden things are not going well. So even the person that you might be enjoying your relationship with could have changing moments that make it more difficult or easier for them to be with. But even when we're looking at how fulfilled do you feel with this person, how much do you enjoy spending time with this person, there's an easier way to think about it when we're talking about romance in particular. And the way I like to view it is in terms of the connection that we have between our mind to the other person's mind, to our soul, spirit, way of being, way of seeing the world, to the other person's spirit or soul, and then our body to the other person's body. Each of these are a specific way at looking at the nature of our relationship, and it can help you put into context whether or not this is the person that is matching what it is that you feel are your priorities. So let's look at that. What does mind to mind mean? I see the mind as mainly what it is that we're viewing and picking up and doing. What are our tasks on earth with what we're thinking about intellectually? So a mind-to-mind connection might be, are you interested in a broad range of topics? Do you get excited about learning something new? Do you love to read? Do you love to debate, but do you prefer to debate with an open mind? Do you like to have conversations where there's disagreement, even if your opinion is different? Do you still enjoy that kind of topic? It's not about having an opinion about how you like to feel when you're connected mind to mind. It's about understanding how you like to feel when you're connecting mind to mind. There are some people who really love to be in a relationship where maybe there's no common interests. Maybe you love wine appreciation and you love the arts and you love baseball and not much else. It's not necessarily about do we connect in what we're focusing on. It's about, is that in alignment with what feels fulfilling to me? Spirit to spirit, soul to soul, I think of that as our perspective, our way of being in this world. That one of the ways I simplify the idea of a way a person is soulfully on earth is how we treat people that we don't have anything that we want to gain from them. How does someone treat the wait staff? How does someone treat someone that earns less money? How do we treat someone that earns more money? How do we treat someone that is in a leadership role, or someone that is even famous? When you start to see how we treat people regardless of who they are and who they're showing up, or what their appearance is, or what their role is, you can get a hint of maybe where they are within their soul's development. Again, it's not about judging. It's not about saying that this is better than that. It's a matter of understanding what your preferences are. Do you want to be with someone that has a broad range of people that they interact harmoniously, regardless of age or height or gender or anything? Is that important to you? Soulfulness is not only demonstrated in how we treat people, but it is about the nature of our spiritual curiosity. Okay? I don't see spirituality as something that's synonymous with religion. Spirituality is your nature. Do you align with kindness? Do you align with understanding that we are powerful? Do you align with the fact that we are here, all of us, interconnectedly and purposefully, for the benefit of the growth of our own soul, but also for the development of all of humanity? These are some of the aspects that demonstrate where a person is within their soul's development. And again, it's not about judgment. It's about, is this a priority to you, that someone be at a certain level in the development of the soul? Body to body seems like it's relatively self-explanatory, especially in the romantic vein, but there's a lot of kind of hidden parts of that. There's not only our sexual expression, but there's also the touch. There's also the look. There's the whether someone's being ignored when they're speaking. There's gestures. There's body language. There's tone. There's word choices. That's part of the body-to-body interaction. Is someone calling you names? Are they names of endearment? Are they derogatory? So the body-to-body connection is that you're in a body, the other person is in a body. What are those interactions between these two bodies like? Once again, I'm going to repeat. It's not about judgment. It's not even judging what it is that you prefer. It's about seeing if you're in alignment with the other person and what they bring to this relationship. So first, you can just simply ponder the mind to mind, the body to body, and the spirit to spirit nature of a relationship. What I have found repeatedly with clients is that when I ask questions about those parts of interacting with someone, and I help them to elicit their knowingness of which one of these is the most important to you. You know, for some people, it's sex. Without this, yeah, there's nothing else. It just doesn't matter to me. That is number one. For some people, it's this incredible intellectual curiosity of continuing to learn and grow and be engaged. And for some other people, it is about spiritual development, about the growth of the soul. In my client base, I will tell you that most often when a person is feeling disconnected from their mate, from their partner, from their romantic partner, mostly the disconnect is coming in the spiritual connection, that the person is, their partner is not living within the vibrational energy that my client has attained through an intentional process of becoming more enlightened, becoming more awake, becoming more aware of their place in the world, what it is that they value, what their priorities are. So very frequently, I will have a client come to me, and even though a relationship may have been incredibly satisfying for a period of time, as they're growing and they're changing and they're exploring and they're expanding and they're removing masks and layers and they're becoming more confident and more expressive and more willing to have happiness and joy, if their partner is staying exactly where they were when they began on that journey, the changes become very apparent and they can become painful even. So often that's the moment when someone is seeking to know, am I going to feel engaged and harmonious in co-creating life with this person in the long run? It's a tough topic because we don't want to think that we can outgrow someone, especially since we're a society that really believes in the value of commitment and the responsibility of that commitment. But just like any kind of growth that we experience in anything, whether it's professional or personal, we can experience growth on different levels from the person we're involved with. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that we are only perceiving as negative. It can be something that's positive, because if you're changing and you're growing and you have different interests, then if the other person is not enjoying it, is not enjoying the new you, is not appreciating it or having curiosity or acceptance or love of it, even if they're not participating in it, then why would you think that you being with that person is the best thing for that person? And that's what we tend to do. We tend to think that as soon as somebody says, you are right for me, that we have to be there because they believe that we're the best thing for them. It's not necessarily true, simply because we have lived and grown in this society where a commitment of longevity is almost expected, and it's almost deemed as moral or immoral if you don't. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are growing at the same rate, and that growing at different rates doesn't mean that there's another relationship out there, not just for you, but for your partner. And if you're keeping your body in that space, in that person's life, you're not only preventing yourself from experiencing something that is a measure of the growth that you're enjoying, but you're also preventing your partner from being involved in a relationship that might be exactly far more harmonious for them at the same time. I have notes all over the place. I would like to take some questions, and I'll get back to a couple more things that I was going to say. It's a huge topic, and we could probably talk for about 10 hours, but I would like to communicate with the people that are online. And as I said, I did have some people, quite a few people, send in questions beforehand. So let's get to a couple of those, and then we'll go back to what you can bring to have relationships more harmonious, okay? But let me start with some of them that people have sent in before we began. I know there was one very related to what we were just talking about. Oh, I love this one. This is funny. Not funny, you know what I mean. So why do I seem, it is funny, why do I seem to enjoy most people's company less since I started on this path of enlightenment? So I guess, hanging out with me has that effect on people. If you look at it, it's kind of funny. There's a reason for it. It's not that we're becoming, less tolerant, because enlightenment by nature means we're getting closer to the vibration of love. So it's not that you're, worse off because you've decided to go on this intentional path of awakening. It's definitely not the explanation. What the explanation is that, let me explain it in terms of how I managed it and what I experienced when I started on this particular path. My journey of knowingness happened when I kind of stumbled out of my body on 9/11/2001. I was able to experience what was happening at the World Trade Center as it was unfolding, even though I was physically an hour away. What I became conscious of, that this was in not aligned with the body of information I heard as a person on earth is that our consciousness is not connected to our body, because it's impossible to have your thought energy be in two places at the same time if we are only sewed into this body and we're not able to expand beyond that with our thought energy. Long story short, I learned how to leave this state of consciousness and to travel into other states of consciousness, including from where we were born. The state of being where we are unconditional love, we know we're unconditional love, and we are surrounded by it. We're in a state of creativity, co-creation, infinite wisdom, infinite beauty, limitlessness, no boundaries. Our curiosity fuels us. We can do anything as we're focusing on it. It's a wonderful state of being. A lot of people have experienced it to some level through meditation or by having a near-death experience. I don't advocate this. Some people can describe even a drug-induced experience where they're feeling more soulful and less human. I don't advocate it, but I have heard accounts of it. So as I started to return home and lived in that state of bliss for an increasing number of hours, because my curiosity was enticing me to ask a million questions and to experience a different view of our reality. What are we doing here? Why are we here? To help me manage some of the really tough experiences that I had as a child and make sense of it, and to understand it in a way where it can enhance my journey instead of make it a difficult journey. The more time I spent in that state of consciousness, the more I began to vibrate more vividly, more confidently, more knowingly. I like to say that I got closer to the vibration of love. Externally for me in my day-to-day life, my life became easier, more satisfying, even more productive, more meaningful. I kind of understood life from a different plane. The downside was that after I would kind of return into just being a human, walking around in these human legs, I would interact with people who were doing their thing, yelling at their kids, and flipping people off in traffic, and yelling about politics, and butting heads, and all this stuff was going on, and I was witnessing it, and it was so different. It was in such contrast to the energy of being not in a human body, not in this physical space. The contrast was so great for me that when I would return to just being a regular kind of person day to day, I found that I was intolerant. I couldn't handle how mean everybody was to each other. Even if I had been so much less loving before I began this journey, it didn't matter. It was the vibration of the way people were being, the way they were treating each other, what was going on in the country and in the world. It was just intolerable for me. So I went through this period in the beginning of this almost intolerable loneliness, because I couldn't find people that I could connect with this insight of what is important, that love is all that matters, that we can be kind, that we can create peace, that we can, be expansive, and that we're limitless and without boundary. So when I read a question like this, why do I seem to enjoy people's company less since I started on this intentional path of enlightenment? It is a byproduct of enlightenment, simply because although I would love to say the percentage of people who are living in the vibration of love is very high, it's simply not true. We have a long way to go. Humanity has a long way to go before we become more loving and accepting and appreciative of the individuality of every single person that is sharing this planet with us. And that's still a long time away. So when we're around people that are negative, when they're not loving themselves, when they feel depleted or scratchy, or they're coming to interactions where they have a need that's not fulfilled and they're trying to fulfill it from you, or they're complaining or they're gossiping, you are working at getting this vibration of yours higher. and really moving past patterns of negativity. So that vibration that other people are still living in becomes less tolerable. It becomes more vividly not where you want to be. So I can say that I'm more judicious about with whom I'm spending time now. I recognize that I can be of value to people, but I can only be of value to people that are curious and have questions and want a new perspective. And if someone is quite content in where they are and they are behaving in ways that are just disagreeable or contentious or egregious, it's not necessarily my responsibility to change them. But it's not my responsibility either to hang out with them. I don't have to give huge amounts of my time anymore to be with people that are not prioritizing what it is that they do with their time in the way that I prioritize what I do with my time. And they have the same choice. In the beginning, when I did become happier, I found that there were a lot of people that, didn't want to hang out with me either anymore. If you want to complain and you want to rip people apart and you want to get into these big sessions of commiserating about how bad things are, then I'm not your go-to person. So maybe you just don't want to hang out with me anymore because I might put a little different spin on it. I might give a different angle. I'm not going to commiserate. I'm not going to agree that life is horrible or people are bad, and I'm certainly not going to participate in gossip. So I'm not your guy anymore. So it's a two-way street. Even when you're pulling back from people who are not vibrating as much in the vibration of love, there's a good chance they don't feel like hanging out with you that much anymore either, because you're not allowing them, you're not giving them permission to stay in a state of consciousness that's not vibrating with the vibration of love. It is a good question. The good news is that to the person who asks this and to anyone is that phase passes, because as you push something out that is no longer a measure of where you are in your life, as you make that space and you make that opening, new things that are a vibrational match, they come in. So there'll be a gap. There'll be a gap. There was a huge gap for me, but the gap will fill in. And now, hey, I attract in some of the best people on earth. They're just, they're wonderful. They care. They're kind. They're respectful. They agree that life is meant to be fun and not meant to be miserable. So their company is something that I enjoy more than the company of some of the people that are not necessarily a part of my life actively anymore. Okay, let's find another question. Here we go. I find that when I'm around family members, I tend to retreat to old habits and attitudes. It's almost as if I fall back to my old mindset. Where did I go? Immediately when I'm talking with them or spending time around them. What's your advice for moving beyond this pattern? I don't mean to be clinical about family, but the family you grow up in, it's a laboratory for experimentation. You're here to develop your soul. You're here to expand. So where you land, who your siblings are, who your caregivers are, who your parents are, even your neighborhood and community. It's the place in which you have this great big what if game. What if I do this? What's the consequence? What if I do that? What's the consequence? So you're kind of feeling your way around people to see, if I do this, if I do that, if I behave like this, if I participate, I don't participate, I throw, I yell, I cry, I do all this. What's the reaction? Now, depending on the nature of the family that you were raised in, that might be a process where the laboratory is really buoying you and allows you to stay connected to yourself and to all of the magnificence around you. So your laboratory becomes a great springboard for the adult that you become, and you can just continue on that journey of self-love and creation and happiness. But if, on the other hand, you've got one of those families that is not necessarily supportive and not necessarily loving, whether it's by intention or by accident, we're all doing the best we can within our level of awareness. You might find that you have developed some defense mechanisms that have helped you to survive that particular and very specific childhood laboratory per se. And those defense mechanisms are designed to protect you from really withering within that family unit. But when you become an adult and you're not living within that unit directly anymore, your tendency is to bring those same habits back, because this family has a script now of what we say, how we treat each other, how we support or don't support each other, and how we support or don't support each person individually within that family unit. It's almost as if the script is complete. It's everybody got a copy. Everybody just, turn to page whatever. I'm going to read this. This is how I'm going to treat you. This is how I'm going to treat you like this on Thanksgiving. But you know what? On my birthday, I'll treat you like this. If you make me happy, I'll treat you like this. And we have this expectation that everyone is going to continue to read from the same script. And that's why we all kind of get pulled back into the habits of our youth within that family unit, because they became so real and they became the way that we could survive or feel a part of being accepted within that unit. Breaking out of it means that I find writing things down is the best. It's focusing on new choices and allowing yourself to execute those choices and beginning to execute them in smaller ways and then practicing. So imagine you go to, the family and everybody has their old scripts, and then all of a sudden you have like, guys, I got a new one. When you say that, I'm gonna say this instead, and you insert that into the family script. What happens is everybody gets confused. Everybody's like, what's going on? She's not reading from the script. Somebody straighten her out, pull her back in, make her do what we want her to do. Doesn't she know the rule? So they're going to try to sabotage you. They're going to try to win you back into whatever they have formed as the pattern of that family, because that's their job. They don't know any different. And when you align with the original script, they're going to feel that they are worthy, because you're in agreement that this is how we're all going to treat each other. I know my role, you know your role. Don't step out of it, so we can all say, yeah, this is the way it's supposed to be. But what does happen is when you insert a new version into the script and you don't fall back into the old script because now you're consciously aware of doing something different, people will be uncomfortable in the beginning. But if you stick with it, if you are consistent, then they will eventually adjust their scripts to who you are. And worst case scenario is if they don't adjust their scripts to who you're choosing to be, then they might decide to spend less time with you. And if you're not enjoying their companionship, that's not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, oh, hi, Jane. She said, hi, greetings from Florida. So I'll say hello. Oh, look at all these beautiful messages. Yes, so true, right, Marie? Heart back at you. Yes. And it's hard. You know what I mean? Like, we have this fear in the family that we were raised in to some degree about stepping out of what the norm is. What are we afraid of? We're going to become the pariah of the family. We're not going to be invited to occasions. We're going to be outsiders. We're not going to be valued. Well, if you're reading from their script and you hate their script, trust me, you're not being valued anyway. You're being tolerated, but you're not being valued because they don't really care who you are. They only care who they want you to be. That alone should give you permission to change it up a little bit. in the end, even if over a long period of time trying to reharmonize a relationship from your childhood, if it doesn't work, it is okay. Do it slowly. You don't have to do it quickly, but it is okay to try to pull back and not necessarily spend as much time or energy in a place where it's not gratifying to you and there doesn't seem to be any intention of making this a more harmonious relationship for you. But I want to get back to the most important word in what I just said. And I don't know, did I say it 3 times or 1 time? Consistency. Consistency. If you come to a conversation with someone where you have a habitual inability to have a result that's positive for you, and one time you change it up, you might get a little pushback. But if the next time you come to that same equation and you go back to the way you used to be, you're not going to get any positive result. They're going to know on some level of consciousness that you're a fraud. You have no intention of making anything different. If you really want to change, you have to change consistently. It's the same premise about raising children. You know, you can't say one thing today and a different thing tomorrow. It's about consistently giving the same message to your children over and over and over again. So if you make the determination, from going back to this person's question, if you make the determination that you want to break out of those habits, then you want to think about how you're going to answer someone's question. You want to think about how you're going to write your new script. You want to think about what ways can you feel empowered to change, even if it's ever so slightly in the beginning, to the point that you can become more free in helping others to become aligned with your expectation instead of only their own expectation. To give you a more specific example, I've helped tons of people in circumstances like this. So let's talk about one exact example. So you go home, let's say you're female, and you go home and your mom's like, oh, you know, those jeans look a bit tight, you know, snacking on a little extra ice cream. And it brings you to a place that, wow, I've been listening to this all my life. And it just triggers all this stuff in your cells and in your emotions and in your being. You feel like you want to cry, you want to run out, you feel like you want to punch the table. But if you say, oh, no, it's just, you know, it's probably hormones, or it's, I haven't been able to exercise because work has been so busy. What you're doing is you're saying it's okay for you to treat me that way. It's okay for you to imply or say that I'm fat. It's okay for you to criticize me every time I see you. But if you could tweak it a little and start to give suggestions about something, whether you need to use a tool of humor or sarcasm or wit, whatever works for you, you know, try out different ideas to see how you can bend that conversation. But with someone that's that difficult or that intolerant or that nasty, it is okay to say, listen, that's not acceptable to me. You've been doing this my whole life. It's had an effect on me. It's not a good effect. And I can't be around it anymore. So you know what? I'm not coming to Sunday dinner if you say something like that. So I'm here for another hour. One more comment like that, you're not going to see me on Sunday. Then what happens on Sunday? You can't go. Don't go. You can't go. Consistency. I know it's a long journey, and I don't want to be flip about it by any means, but at least this is a starting point to change behaviors and patterns, among others, that are just not working. So let's see what other questions we have. I should go to one more of mine. Oh, this is a nice one that it's illuminating. It's not nice that it's good. It's nice that it's illuminating. The answer is anyway. This person wrote to me that I experienced so much trauma during the first 40 years of my life that I built tremendously high and thick walls in order to protect myself. And now I'm on the other side of those traumatic events, and I've learned to take better care of myself, but I see that these walls have made me feel trapped and isolated. I'm glad I accidentally went in the order. Accidents, there are no accidents. I accidentally went in the order of answering questions that I did, because the question I just answered is actually alluded to this. one of the things about feeling trapped or having up a wall is that it's actually healthy to have up a wall with people that have harmed you, with people who have been abusive or neglectful or disrespectful or unloving. It is okay to have up a wall, but just be aware that you have that wall up with them. Of course, the challenge comes in when you take that wall and you apply it to people who have not harmed you. And that can be difficult because it can put you in a situation where you feel isolated, or it's harder for you to let the walls down and let somebody come in and love you and trust you, and for you to trust them, and for you to open up and experience that mutuality. So what I recommend, and it's kind of a process again, you can't watch this for an hour and then have everything you want in an hour and a half. So it's a process. And the process is that I say that it's twofold. Number one is you really learn to trust yourself with other people, that you trust that deep within, beyond the wounds that you had, that you have an intuition about the nature of people. And then you take that intuition and you partner it with evidence. Be in circumstances with people that allow you to see many different sides, so that you can see if the way that they behave, especially in a variety of circumstances with you or with others, if it aligns with what you intuitively felt about that person. Relationships are something that build. I totally get that we can meet someone and know instantaneously that there is an instant bond, and it feels wonderful, whether they're going to be a friend or a coworker or a lover. It feels like a soulmate on some level. I understand that. However, even if you feel a soul-to-soul connection, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person housing the soul doesn't have their own baggage that might not make them in alignment with the way that you want to be treated. So it's still a good idea to let time be your ally. Time is really the way that we can unfold the quality of trust between us and another person. It's wonderful to say, I'm going to jump in with 2 feet and an open heart because I just am an open book and this is the way I want to experience life. But the person that matters the most in that equation is always going to be you. So in order to value you, just let time be the way that you get to experience if the person's behavior and choices actually prove or validate what your intuition was about them. It's so interesting how over and over and over again, when we're looking at a relationship and we're pulling down, like, where was the root? When did you know that this potential existed for this person to really hurt you? When did you know that that existed? And when we really, really, really look at the timeline, we say, you know what, I think it was within 24 hours of meeting that person, or it was certainly within the first 3 months. So what you have to do is trust that gut feeling to some extent, as long as you're recognizing that it's a true sense of intuition and not necessarily a reaction from the body of deleterious relationship experience that you might have. If you can sense that it's intuitive, and then you watch behaviors, you'll know if they're in alignment with what's important to you. Being valued, being appreciated, being loved, being open, whatever it is that you value. Time is the thing that's going to allow you to know if you can let down your guard. The other thing too is that it's a good idea to take small steps. And the way to take small steps to see if this is a person that you can open up to more is just by sharing. So share, but share small things to begin with. You'll know if you share small things. You can tell by the person's reaction in the moment, and then their longer term reaction, the way that they treat you, whether they hold your heart in their hands. you'll know from the smaller steps whether or not you can let down that guard and let this person in. If you're sharing something and they're not paying attention, or they're on their device, or they're critical, or they're talking over you, there's a good indication that that might not be the next most trusting relationship where you want to open up your heart. So try going with slow steps with other people. One way that you can feel that intimacy of being able to trust somebody is when they share too. That's a sign that if you're going to open up to me, it's a safer zone for me to open up to you. Okay. Lots of new comments. Let's see what we have going on here. I know that I'm trying to cover a lot of material in one quick hour. I really am. But if you really take to heart that you have the ability to execute some of these suggestions, just know that you have the power to do it, okay? You might have to think about it a little bit more. You might have to write about it. You might have to put mantras hanging up. You might have to solicit an encouragement buddy, someone that can help you in the growth of your relationships. But you can do it. Fundamentally, you can do it. Let's see what other questions we have. Oh, thank you, Mike. You say I'm talking directly to you. That's kind of cool. I always like that. I had a little bit more of an agenda that I wanted to cover, but the questions are so helpful. And one was that, what do you do if you feel like your soulmate is eluding you? And first of all, I always want to tell people that there is this notion that we have a soulmate, and in the dot of, I lost count of how many people are on Earth. It's like 4 billion now, I guess, right? 4 billion? I don't know, maybe it's 5. But in that 4 billion, there's that dot, and that's the one for you, and you gotta get to that dot. That's your soulmate. It's not really like that. We are traveling with souls eternally, and the magnetic energy of love is what allows us to come together. It allows us to experience each other in human form for the growth and the development of each of our souls. So we don't only have one soulmate. We have lots of soulmates, lots. And a soulmate is not only someone that can be a potential harmonious romantic partner with you. A soulmate can be a friend, a teacher, a neighbor, a sibling. So the first thing to get over is the idea that there's a limit. There is no limit. There are lots and lots and lots of people that we can explore having wonderful and vibrant relationships with. So get away from the scarcity of the idea that it's only one or only a few, because that puts you within a limit. But when you open up to the idea that there's so many souls that you have traveled with, that you can have these great soul-to-soul relationships with, they start to come in more when you accept that. Yeah, I have so many other questions that I had wanted to get to on my own agenda, but we're going to continue with questions here instead. You're welcome, Sue, for me taking my time tonight. Okay, the next, my definition of a soulmate, that's what I was just kind of talking about. My definition of a soulmate is that, the core word in it is soul. It means that there is a soulful interconnectedness, that we have a sense it is eternally based. It is outside of the limits of just one person knowing another person on Earth and being here temporarily. It's a knowingness that on some level you really feel like this person has your back. They understand you. There's an intimate connection that you might not have necessarily felt even with the family members that you grew up with. It is a basic knowingness. And that the key is, like I said, it's to remember that we have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of soulmates, even if you have not yet met them. Just setting your intention to magnetize them in, and then showing up to the equation of loving yourself and believing that it's possible to have those kinds of relationships is part of the journey, part of the experience. Getting back to like, how do I magnetize in the one, right? How do I magnetize in that one? I listen to everybody that they're all involved in the law of attraction and this, and I made a vision board and I have a list and this is what I want, and what I want in him, this is what I want in her. Another part of it too is to not just limit your focus on what you want to experience with someone else, but also take some time to think about what you offer. What are you bringing to a relationship? And it's a little hard to do that because most of us tend to veer toward being very, very modest or lacking in self-confidence. So we can't necessarily understand the vibrancy of everything that we bring to a relationship. So that's a little bit of a challenge. But if you stick with it and you don't feel like there's this self-criticizing bit of you looking over your shoulder as you're writing down what you bring, no one's going to read this except for you. You can hide it, you can burn it, but write it and try to open up. What am I bringing? I'm bringing compassion, I'm bringing humor, I'm bringing experience or wisdom or playfulness, or I can sing, I can cook, I can be kind to children, animals love me. I was kidding about the singing. I can't sing. If you ever see me actually about to try to sing, I recommend that you run really, really fast. Just run away. But there are so many things. It's not just, what you do for a living or what you do with your time. It's also your nature. How do you make people feel? What do you focus on? What are your qualities that you've seen other people appreciate and experience in you? So when you're thinking about an optimal mate, magnetizing that person in, don't just focus on the qualities of someone that you would like to be with, but also focus on what you bring to the equation too. Not only is it great for you to become more aware of how meaningful and valuable it is for someone to experience you in a relationship, but it also is making that list is also a conversation with the universe. So you're actually telling the universe that I value myself enough to be aware of how another person can have really great benefit in being in a relationship with me. And when you have that conversation with the universe, you're changing the magnetic energy of who comes to you, because most of us are not spending time valuing who we are or inventorying the great qualities that we have. We live in a world that more tears us down than builds us up. So in the privacy of your own home and your own notebook, build yourself up. All right, my intention was to spend about an hour with everybody tonight, but I am going to take, say, 2 more questions. But I do want to take this opportunity first to invite you to my next Making Discovery seminar. I do give them monthly. They are live and in person in Plainview, New York, always on the 2nd Wednesday of each month. But they're live streamed on Zoom, so you can participate and ask questions right there with us. And the video for that presentation is always available the following day as well. And in Making Discoveries, my aim is to take the body of knowledge that I have gained in my own journey on the path of enlightenment, and wherever I might be on that path, I don't know where it is. I'm not finished, you're not finished, none of us are finished, but wherever I am, there are some people that haven't gotten to that spot yet, right? So I like to say, here's what I've experienced. Here's another step that I found. Sometimes I stumbled upon it, sometimes I intended it, but here's what it felt like before, and here's how my life improved after. So each month I talk about another one of these things that are so mysterious before we experience them, and help you to kind of set your GPS toward getting there, so that you can experience the goodness and the happiness that comes as a result of that process of enlightenment. So this month I'll be focusing on something that we see really often, that there are so many people And maybe you're one of them to some degree or another, where you seek and you read and you see speakers and you learn and it resonates and you're just packed. You got so much, spiritual information in your head, but you're having a hard time getting it from your head into your being. So I'm going to be talking on October 10th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time about that. How do you move this stuff from here to here? Because it's really cool having it in here. It does help you have hope, and it helps you to maybe even be a little more peaceful, but it's still not the same as having it in here. Living it and being it is what really brings the harmony, the fulfillment, the happiness, and so on. So I hope to see you on October 10th, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So let me take a couple more questions, and then I'm going to let you guys go and do whatever it is you do, okay? All right, let's see. I landed on, let me make sure I had all the ones that were given to me in advance first. I know I had a few more here. Okay, what if we, someone had written me a beautiful letter, and it was just jam-packed with so many compliments to me. It's on Facebook, so I can't read it, because hey, how much fun would that be to listen to, compliments about me? But I can't read it, so I'm going to just tell you the basic gist of it was, what happens if you have differing views and methods with children, two parents coming together and they see things differently? The question was enfolded in the fact that I always mention in my books and at my seminars that you can only bring yourself to any equation. You can't bring change to anyone else if they're not interested or curious about changing their perspective or their behaviors or their actions. And so that's all well and good if you're aware that you can only be responsible for you. But if you're co-parenting, what happens if your views are dramatically different? How do you balance that? The first thing I want to say about that is that, I don't see things in terms of good or bad or right or wrong. I see things in terms of whether or not a behavior or choice is aligned with love. Is it a loving choice? Is it a loving action? Is it a loving way of being? Is it expansive? Is it allowing someone to appreciate who they are? To become more mature in their self-reliance as far as children. So this isn't about what is good in parenting or what is bad. It's about, is this in alignment with helping the child to become the most self-reliant, self-confident individual that they can under the auspices of being raised by you and whomever, if we have a co-parent here. So that's the first thing, is to not think in terms of right or wrong, but think in terms of being loving and expansive. So one of the things in looking at it like that is you have to understand kids innately know when a parent is being more loving than another. They innately know when a parent is more in agreement with allowing them to be themselves. So trust your child too. If your other co-parent is behaving in such a way that is dramatically narrowing down their range of choice or focus or belief in themselves in comparison to what you might offer that child as a possibility, just at least accept that your child understands that your view might be more in alignment with appreciating who the child is as an individual. That's the first thing. The second thing is to recognize that there are kind ways to say to your children that this is a compromise. I have one view and this person has a different view. And explaining it either while you're together or maybe a little bit when you're separately in a kind way. But just explain that we have different views and that this is something that we agree on, because we have to make a decision together about what we believe might be the best thing for you. Asking your children questions too about the result of it can make them feel, if the decision felt like it might be disempowering them, if you ask them questions, at least it'll help them to know that their voices matter. And we always have to recognize that if there are two parents raising children, it is important that both people's voices be heard. But I do find that it is mandatory that both people agree that being loving is the number one priority. I don't say that it's any compromise. If you're going to be mean and I'm going to be kind, that's not a compromise. Talking more about the details of, like, do we go to church on Sunday, or do we go to bed at 9, or do we go to bed at 9:30? Do we eat sugary snacks when we get home, or do we eat healthy snacks? Do we do our homework at 7, or do we do our homework when we walk in the door? I'm talking about the things where it really is more about the structure of life. I'm not talking about being kind or abusive or loving. That's a topic for an entire other day. If someone is neglectful or abusive or mean or bullying to your children, that's an entirely different topic. I hope that helped a little bit. I given lots of parenting classes, so I can barely even begin to cover that topic here tonight. So one more question, and then we'll call it a night. This is somebody saying that the spiritual gap that I had discussed earlier, that she can sense different levels of where a person is at as they are speaking. And she's saying that, I know this sounds weird, but it distracts me. I don't necessarily think that has to be something that's distracting, because if you have a sense of where someone is within their spiritual growth by the way they're speaking and what their topics are, what you're really doing is you're in a state of observation. One of the ways that we learn so much in being human and allowing our soul to have this human experience is by observing others, seeing how they behave, how they talk. Those observations are powerful. It's, is it any different than having a science experiment and just writing down the observations as the experiment is unfolding? Observing people and seeing how they are, where they are, what level of awareness they have when you're speaking. It's okay. It's okay to observe. It gives you some insight into where you are as a comparative, but it also gives you insight into what types of people you prefer to spend your time with. So I don't think that observation is necessarily something that is distracting. What might be more distracting would be if that other person that you're observing, the way that they speak, is not in alignment with you. I think that could be far more distracting. But having a sense of spiritual awareness about what makes people tick and why they behave the way that they do and why they're saying things the way that they do, it's okay to say, I'm really happy that I have this level of awareness and that I have this ability to have this insight. If you think of it in terms of, if I had more math background and someone's asking me to help them out because they have a test tomorrow in, algebra, it's okay. It's not distracting for me to observe that they're not understanding the mathematical formulas and how to apply them. I'm observing that I do have more knowledge, and it's okay to have more knowledge about this specific topic, and I can share it. In a case where someone's asking you to help, I was going to sip water. You're allowed to help, but in the case where you're observing spiritual differences between you and somebody else, you might not be invited in to help. So just appreciate the fact that the observation is beneficial. Okay, so let me leave you. I still didn't take the sip of water, right? Much better. Okay, so I will put up my daily post tomorrow connected to this topic, and I will do my best to expand on some of the things that we hit on tonight and keep moving toward understanding relationships from a more spiritual, more mutually beneficial perspective as time goes on. But do come to my page. I put up a daily post every day, somewhere around 8 a.m. Eastern time. That's what I aim for. And come by and see what tomorrow's post says in relation to talking about developing, maintaining, and attracting in harmonious relationships for you. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you next week.